Welcome to Revolutionary Optimism. Issues like economic hardship, political violence, and the rise of authoritarianism have left many Americans feeling more despair than ever. Fortunately, physician, humanitarian, and social justice advocate Dr. Paul Zeitz has identified revolutionary optimism as a new cure for that hopelessness and cynicism. Once you commit yourself as a revolutionary optimist, you can bravely unleash your personal power, #unify with others, and accelerate action for repair, justice, and peace. On this podcast, Dr. Zeitz is working to provide you with perspectives from leaders on their strategies for overcoming adversity and driving forward revolutionary transformation with optimism. In this episode, Dr. Zeitz is talking with Celinda Lake. Celinda Lake is one of the Democratic Party's leading political strategists. In 2020, she was one of the two lead pollsters for the Biden campaign. She led the focus groups for Clinton and Gore and is the only Democratic pollster to play key roles in defeating two Republicans. Lake's polling and strategic advice has helped candidates such as Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Senator Jon Tester, Senator Debbie Stabenow, and former Governor Bob Wise to groundbreaking wins. And her expertise helped guide former Senator Mark Begich to victory, making him the first Senate candidate in Alaska to oust an incumbent in 50 years. Celinda has focused especially on women's concerns and women candidates, including Speaker Pelosi, former Senator Carol Moseley Braun, former AG Patricia Madrid, and over a dozen women in the House and Senate. Celinda worked on behalf of the largest independent expenditure to take back the House in 2006 and has been a key player in campaigns launched by progressive groups such as the AFL-CIO, SEIU, NRDC, Eco America, Planned Parenthood, Vote Vets, HRC, and Emily's List. Lake co-authored the book, What Women Really Want with Republican pollster Kellyanne Conway, which examines the way that women are changing the political landscape in America. She also co-authored the book, A Question of Respect with Republican pollster Ed Giaz. Celinda works with innovative messaging projects that help redefine language on abortion, economy, inequality, big money in politics, climate change, public schools, teachers, criminal justice reform, and race and class. Here's your host, Dr. Paul Zeitz.
Hey, Celinda, welcome to Revolutionary Optimism. It's an honor to have you here today.
I love it, and I love the title of your podcast. It's so great. We need that right now.
We sure do. So I've known you for a long time now, and we've reconnected recently, but I wanted to ask you to go back in time and share with my listeners your story, your personal story. Like, how did you get into polling and how did you pursue political polling specifically?
Well, I was born and raised on a ranch in Montana in a Republican family, and I was a teenage Republican, but they were not MAGA. It was a different kind of libertarian Republican in those days. But I was very, very interested in politics and campaigns. I was also very progressive. I was going to be an EEOC lawyer, and I decided I wanted to go to a women's college because I wanted to go someplace where women were always on top. And I went to Smith College, and I was in pre-law. And then I took a junior year abroad in Geneva, Switzerland, which was one of the best experiences of my life. And I met there a bunch of people from the University of Michigan who were trying to take the American voting behavior and apply it to the European context. And I took everything I could from them. I just absolutely fell in love with polling and data and statistics and computers. And I did very well in the classes. People would kid me that I was the only person who could understand the fractured French of all of our American professors. So I spent my time translating what was happening in the classroom to the other students. And then I wrote my first paper when in those days we still had mega computers and we were carrying card decks back and forth from the computer center. And then I came back, changed to American voting behavior, had changed from law school to the University of Michigan and ISR and survey research, and changed from Republican to a Democrat.
Fascinating. So it reminds me of the story of Jeanette Henkin, who was a pioneer from Montana.
Yes.
And her brother, I read the book that Larissa wrote, and her brother actually set up public polling at the train station,
That's
when
right.
people arrived. And so there's something in the water or the air out there in Montana about
That's great.
focusing on public opinion.
Yep. And listening to your neighbors and then having good civil conversations.
Okay, great. Yeah. So I didn't realize you were from Montana. So, and you had this personal shift from being raised in a conservative family into more progressive politics. So you kind of understand both sides of the coin. And you've written a couple books with Republicans. And can you tell me about those efforts? I just want to shout out A Question of
Oh, thank
Respect.
you.
Yeah, which is your most recent book with Ed Goes. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Um,
Yes.
and your prior book with Kellyanne about women's role. So, boy, how have things changed over the years. Any reflection?
So my first book, Kellyanne and I were both really, really involved in women's politics. And she had a firm that was involved in women's politics and women commercially, which is, by the way, how she met Ivanka Trump and became part of the Trump team. But we wrote about what women really want. And the premise of the book was 80% of women agree on 80% of things. And yet our country can't get moving forward. And it still seems pretty apt today, although the polarization is pretty sobering today. The book, It's a Question of Respect, was written analyzing the problem. And also, Ed was very interesting because Ed was born into the military and came from a Democratic family. I was born in a ranch, came from a Republican family. We both switched in the same year, 1972. We both, or right after the 72 election, we both decided to be pollsters. And, it's a lot easier for the pollsters to get along and compare because the data is the data.
Mm.
And if you finding something really different, then you question, like what could you ask? What order was it in? Who was your sample? And
Mm.
not in a belligerent way, but in a way of like the data is the data. We want to understand what's going on there. And the battleground survey, Ed and I were working on democracy in Hungary, and we were at a piano bar in Hungary, and we were bemoaning the fact that there was really no decent bipartisan polling, that it was all very watered down. And we said, what if we started something where we wrote separate analyses and didn't actually even get to see each other's analysis until after it was released?
Yeah.
So we would agree on the questionnaire, but we would write our own analysis. And that went on for 32 years and I think was very insightful. And we made it public. And the point was, and we learned a lot from each other about how each other thought about data and different categories of voters, et cetera.
Fascinating. Can you share like an example of when your you had the same data, but your analysis interpreted something this way and his analysis thought about it differently? Can you give us like an example of that?
Yeah, one really interesting example, we decided early on, like maybe 12 years ago, to look at, or more, to look at populism. And we both he came from Oklahoma. His last stay was Oklahoma in the military. I came from Montana, both very libertarian populist states.
Hmm.
And so I wrote my questions, he wrote his questions. And he was arguing, he was actually prefacing Trump and saying that there was really dangerous room for a very populist, authoritarian, strong leader in the Republican side. And I was arguing that populist economics was really an opening for Democrats. And we had both written the other side. And then we brought the questions together. And I said to him, and he said to me, we would never say it that way. So I wrote the Democratic side, he wrote the Republican side. And when we posed them against each other, it was a dead split, that both kinds of populism were very appealing. And there were lots of voters who saw no contradiction between voting for both. And
Hmm.
you've seen it play out in the Bernie Trump voters and the independent Trump voters. So that was a thing where we didn't necessarily conclude different things, but we learned in an iterative way that populism could be very strong for either party.
Well, that's really fascinating because that takes me back to the 2016 election where
Exactly.
uh, Hillary was orchestrated as the candidate from the Democratic Party, and Bernie had tapped into that populist economic fervor, but he got squashed by the party and closed down, and then Trump ended up winning. So,
Right.
I mean, I think there's a lot of people that have thought that things could have been really different if either Hillary would have figured out how to tap into that populist fervor or if Bernie would have been the candidate. What do you think about that?
Well, it's always easy to second guess, but in some key states like Michigan, you had Bernie win the primary. And you had a situation where Hillary didn't go into Michigan at the end because they were taking it for granted and they should not have been taking it for granted. But
Well,
she
that was
should have
true
gone
for
in.
Michigan, Wisconsin, all those battleground states, right?
Yes,
Pennsylvania.
exactly.
No, she
Same
was
thing
in
in
Pennsylvania,
Wisconsin.
but yeah, that was
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah,
So I think that the Democrats have had a major, major problem in our presidential candidates not having a populist enough economic message. And I actually, of Obama, Biden, Hillary, and Harris, Biden was the most comfortable with populist economics because he actually came from real working class background.
right.
And his message was pretty populist, actually. And then he was also, in part, because everybody thought it was an existential threat, he was endorsed by Bernie early on in the process. If you remember, when everybody felt like we need to pick someone and we need them
Right,
to, we
right.
need to focus together in 20 because we cannot have another term of Trump. And boy, we're rewrite. So I think that the Democrats right now face the same challenge in 26 and 28. We're going to win a lot in 26, but we need a populist economic alternative. And you see individual candidates running very aggressively on that. You see the Bernie AOC tour, but we still, as a party, have not become completely comfortable with that. And that's a big problem.
Well, great. That's a perfect segue to the present. And I wanted, with all your experience and all your awareness of the data and the polling and all the relationships you have right now, can you help us make sense of what is happening right now? I mean, this is a different moment. It's not same old, 2008, 2012, all those years where we were operating under a system that we understood. Now it's different. Can you explain your analysis of why you think the moment we're in now is different?
Well, I think it's different, but I also want to offer why I think there's a lot of opportunity. So, in one thing, I think the rules are completely off. And I think there were norms that we operated by for a long time that limited behavior on both sides. I mean, who would have thought I never thought I would personally be nostalgic for George Bush or even Ronald, but they all observe certain boundaries that are no longer in place. And I think it's been, as soon as we can get power back in 29, let's hope, I think we have to look at what do we need to solidify our system. We cannot rely just on norms. And then I think there are some institutions that have broken down. I think the Supreme Court has broken down. We need term limits. We need rotating terms. We need controls on how many one president can appoint. We need something or many things. We need a set of ethics rules. We also have a situation, and it's going to be a long way back, that we have to restore trust. I mean, party voters dislike both parties. They think both parties are equally corrupt, which, I mean, given the corruption on the Republican side, I can understand critiquing Democrats for being corrupt. I get that. The same? Come on. And we are rated the same on corruption. For a long time, we were rated as more corrupt. So we really have to clean our own house. And then the Republicans offer a simple economic point of view. We do not. And we're never going to have the numbers we need until we offer a real economic alternative. And, right now we have 30 people running for president. And I would hope out of that, I know 30, it's a great parlor game to see if you can name all 30.
I,
Um, we need to have at least 25 economic plans out there, 25 economic narratives that really establish our party on the economic front. Because if you don't have an economic reason to vote for Democrats, you're not going to vote for Democrats, particularly if you're blue collar. And then finally, I think that the lack of an economic message makes us seem, and we should stand for what's right, but it makes us seem obsessed. Voters did not disagree with us as much on trans issues. They did disagree with us on some, but 61% of voters thought we were obsessed with transgender issues. Now, we're going to stand up for transgender people. I hope we continue to do that. We need to do that. We need to stop bullying. But come on, they're obsessed. We're not obsessed. We're just not going to let people be harmed. And I think that the lack of an economic message makes voters think they just want to talk about these social issues. They don't want to talk about kitchen table economics. Happily, we are facing an absolutely insane team. We are facing really failed economic policies, and voters are calling him on it. He's doing the same mistake that the Biden team made of claiming victory when voters aren't feeling it. He's broken a lot of promises, and voters are getting very, very frustrated with the self-serving corruption, the lack of reality, the forever wars, our taxpayer dollars going to nothing that helps our families. So I think we're going to win, but we need to win big. We need to mobilize people, and we need to have an economic message.
Yeah. Okay, great. So, two dimensions of that I want to unpack with you. First of all, you're talking about Democratic and Republican. That's the framework that your polling is usually done in. As you know, however, a large majority of Americans, including myself, are self identified as independent. And that
Yeah.
number seems to be going up. As you said,
Yeah.
people are so frustrated with the entrenched corruption and control of the two parties, they're shifting. Now, how do you see that? And how do you see that unfolding in the 26 and 28 elections? Because I think that is a wild card that neither side is really adequately, I see it as an opportunity. How do you see it?
I see it as an opportunity too. And I think there are some electoral reforms, even if we don't go to a multi party system, which I think we should seriously consider. But structurally, that's still pretty hard in our country. I think we need to look at ways to change the system. I am personally a big fan of ranked choice voting. I think it provides more opportunities for minorities and women. I think it makes for more positive campaigns. It makes every vote count. It has just a lot of advantages. We would never have won Alaska without ranked choice voting, for example,
Right.
with Mary Peltola. And I'm a big fan of it. I think that we need to open up participation in primaries. Right now, primary turnout is down to 13%. For goodness sakes, we could get Paul Yu elected in the Democratic nominee for Senate in Montana. If all it is 13%, we need turnout up so that more voices are represented, particularly with such bad gerrymandering where so many of the choices are made in the primaries. So I think that we need to think about electoral reforms. And then I think that our democracy is in really bad shape. Voters distrust it. It's a bad word. It's a meaningless word to anybody under 45. And we need to define what democracy is. We need to put safeguards in place. And we really need a pretty massive look at our system to restore trust and to restore democracy. We need to talk about what we mean by that.
Yeah, yeah. The other thread that you talked about was the economic message, and we all, of course, all know about Mayor Mandami's affordability message. He seems to be delivering on that, and now you
Yeah.
see everyone trying to copycat that. I'm sure the Democratic Party is trying to figure that out for itself. And now you'll also hear Republicans talk about that. But give us some more meat on the bones. Like you said, the Republicans have a simple, economic message, and the Democrats don't. Can you like elaborate on what you mean by all that?
Well, the Republican message, and of course, I think Mandami took some of it on straight on, is we need to put Americans first. And they have a certain definition of that I think many of us reject, but we need America first and Americans first. Even though they're putting corporations and billionaires first, but they claim they're putting Americans first. And they will say things like, you need to hold on to more of your money, and we need to get government out of your lives, and lower your taxes. And they come up with brilliant examples like the overtime tax and the tip tax, and attribute it to having interacted with everyday people. He
Mm,
says he got the tip no tax from a waitress in Nevada.
right.
What's working now is that their actions belie their deeds. It's a thriving America only for certain Americans and certain very wealthy Americans. and he's not delivering on lower gas prices, lower food prices, lower housing, lower healthcare costs. He's taking away healthcare. So his records do matter. But it is also very hard to beat something with nothing. And I think we have our critique down, but we don't necessarily have our alternative very vocal. I think there was a very good lesson from both of the gubernatorial races we won in Virginia and New Jersey in the last month of the campaign. Both candidates reissued a contract with their voters, 10 things they were going to do on getting rising costs down, getting prices down. Abigail Spanberger took it on the road, visited 67 communities, said, here's what I'm going to do. Hold me accountable. Mikey Sherrill said, here's my 10 points. I'm going to do the first three immediately. And she interrupted her inaugural address and signed an executive order to cap utility prices. That's delivering.
Right.
And that's what we need to do. We need to have a clear, and not every proposal that we've ever thought of. I think not only do we need to deal with prices and costs, but we need to deal with wages too. The other affordability issue is jobs are not paying enough. And part of that is we don't have strong unions, and we need to fight for unionization. Unions clearly make a difference in the wages that people are paid and the benefits that they have. And so we have to have a fuller economic plan. I think, by the way, if we could modify one thing, I wouldn't call it affordability, because I never had anybody in a focus group say, I want the affordability candidate. That's not the way people talk. People talk, my costs are too high. I have to have a second job. I'm choosing between food and medication. I can't make ends meet. My back is to the wall. And we need to communicate. That's the kind of language Trump uses.
Right.
And we need to use that kind of everyday language that resonates with real lived experience.
So how would you capture that in a campaign's message?
Well, I think there are a number of candidates who have captured it quite well. I think Bernie and AOC have captured it extremely well on their national tour. I think Abdul El Sayed, who just got the UAW endorsement in Michigan, captured it very well in fighting. He's on a picket line today. I mean, he walks the walk. There are a number of candidates. I think both Iowa Senate candidates captured it quite well. Sam Forstak, who ran and won the first congressional district in Montana, my home state, fires smoke jumper, and lobbyist for the people and union head captured it quite well. So there are a lot of candidates. Mondani captured it quite well. There are a lot of candidates out there. And it isn't necessarily, I mean, our side always wants everything we believe in. We want the treatise. We want the education doctrine written in 16th grade education level. Trump talks at a 5th grade level, and he talks in very specifics that people can track getting done. And that's one of the things. I mean, obviously, Mondani is one of the smartest people we're ever going to see in politics, but you know what he's going to do. It's very concrete, and he talks in very concrete language, and then he delivers in concrete ways.
Yeah. That's that's really interesting. You talk about his messaging and language, everyday pocketbook issues, plus delivering. And you mentioned Mickey Sherrill in governor of New Jersey, who also did that combo. So that is a winning combo. Now, you talked about how the democracy is broken, and then we're talking about getting elected in the broken system, which I totally understand. Some folks in the democracy space, where I do a lot of activism, say we have to fix the democracy before we can deal with all the other problems. But what you're saying is actually, no, we have to communicate and really take on the pocketbook issues, that the struggle that everyday Americans are feeling about paying their bills, and take action on that before we can actually fix the democracy. So,
Well, I
or
they
how
are.
do we live it both ways? I mean,
Yeah. I think they are intimately linked. I think, for example, you cannot fix the economy in the economic crisis, and the fact that families are not thriving, they can't make ends meet. And that is fixing democracy. What is democracy in our mind? It is having your say. It is having a choice of candidates. It is having the candidates listen to the people and do what they tell them to do and make their lives better and make the system work for them, make the economy work for them. So I personally, and this is a big hole, and Paul, you and I have talked about this. I really would love to work together on this. I think they're intimately linked. And as long as we go which one first or they're separate, we never have either one strong enough. We
Right.
need to link them together. And you can tell one of the places I think they're really linked is initiatives. You have a number of states, 16 states with initiatives. People
Mm.
pass economic initiatives all the time. And yet, in many of those states, the state legislators or the AGs are trying to overturn the will of the people. And it infuriates the people. Here they took direct action.
Right.
And we're working in Nebraska with people who support the initiative and like support the raise in minimum wage. And we've said to our message that we suggested is if the elected officials think the voters made a mistake, they need to go back to the voters. They don't have the right to overturn what the voters said. Go back to the voters and argue to them they made a mistake. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. You'll see. But your opinion doesn't get to overrule the voters.
Great segue to the next segment here, which is that the focus of my work is really about underneath the debate about how to fix things, but it's how we make decisions. And I call it refounding patriotism. We want to
Mm.
refound the way our system of government operates so that we can actually use deliberation and harness the wisdom of the American people beyond just our role as voters, but also we want people to take on deliberation. And I'm excited to tell you the deliberative wave, which started in Europe and has spread globally, is now finally, at last, hit the American shores. There are deliberations, large numbers of them happening at the city and local level. More and more states are now setting them up. And now finally, we have the technology for large scale online deliberations. One of the campaigns that I'm working with closely is called the People's Bill of Rights 250, and they're working on launching this week, actually, a nationwide effort to create a deliberation about our fundamental rights, which links to it is a melding of those pocketbook issues with how our government is structured. I don't know if we're going to, thread the needle and get it right, but I mean, we're trying to figure out how to do both. So I'd love to hear your take on, are Americans really ready for constitutional adjustment? You talked about many things that could happen, but some of those things require either legislation or they require constitutional amendments. So, are where is the public? We're not sure because it's what you said earlier. They're all trying to just survive. So if you're trying to survive, how do you have a time to understand, how to fix the system?
Well, I think I believe, as a pollster, I think you have to respect public opinion because you listen to it all day long. So if you didn't think people were smart, it would be a really brutal occupation. I think the wisdom of the people, they may not be as far all the way as deliberative democracy and some of the forms you're talking about, et cetera. But I mean, look at Mandami. After he was elected, he held those town hall meetings. And they weren't like everybody talking to everyone. Everyone got 5 minutes and you could make any suggestion you wanted, and people loved it. Mayor Franklin, Shirley Franklin, mayor of Atlanta, first African American woman mayor, and she used to have Wednesday office hours. And she said, anybody can come into my office for 5 minutes. You can yell at me, you can tell me, you can suggest anything you want. And it could be a big issue and it can be a little issue. And people loved it. And I came into her or just passed a note or whatever. And then she would report out to the people what people had said to her.
Yeah.
And, she had to raise the water rates really, really high to replace the sewer system because it was collapsing. And she held a press conference and she said, here are all the people complaining about their water rates. Here's my water bill. I got my water bill. And I said, who the heck increased my water this much? I can't afford this. And then I realized, wait a minute, I did. Because we got to replace the systems or the whole city's going to collapse. So I think mayors are massively underutilized, by the way, because they dominate such major media markets
Yeah.
and they are embedded in such dialogue with their voters. And
Yeah.
so I think we should, start this. I'm glad to hear you're talking a lot of cities using it because I think that's a real place to have this operationalized. And people tend to like their cities and they like the diversity of their cities and the neighborhoods of their cities.
Yeah.
And the mayors definitely tend to appeal across neighborhoods to get elected. So I think, the voters are ahead of the elites. They don't think Citizens United should even exist. It's not free speech, it's paid speech. I couldn't agree with them more. Larry Lessig is trying to get that reestablished by the courts. I personally believe we need public financing. The voters don't want to put their hard earned money to campaigns, so it's a hard sell. But these matching programs, which elected Mandami, by the way, massively, massively successful in these cities. We talked about ranked choice voting. When you explain it to people, they really like it. Term limits. I'm not a big term limit fan, but maybe we're getting to the stage where we need it, or at least term limits for Supreme Court justices. So I don't know that we need a PhD in constitutional law here to be able to talk, to have a public dialogue about some of the reforms that we need. And some of these reforms, I mean, we were for fair gerrymandering. We worked on the initiatives for impartial gerrymandering. In California, we were threatened and opposed by both the Democratic and the Republican Party.
Yeah.
Because the parties want to they have a lot in these systems that maintain their place. The voters were wildly in favor of impartial gerrymandering.
Right.
So now, of course, the whole thing is very complicated. The voters would pass the Voting Rights Act tomorrow. They're stunned that it could be done away with. Why wasn't it a permanent feature of the Constitution?
Mm.
So I think the public's way more ready than the elites imagine. I think we should just get going on some things. And I think we should link democracy and the economy if we really want to get the power of both. We will not have our families thriving if we don't have a thriving democracy, because billionaires are never going to pass this stuff for the rest of us.
Exactly. Well, let's go with our remaining minutes. I really want to tap into your wisdom about the upcoming 2026 midterm elections. We talked about it in general terms, but I think that a lot of people are expecting it will be a contested election. And there could be draconian measures used by the regime, the MAGA Project 2025 regime, including the Insurrection Act could be invoked. One scenario I've been hearing a lot about is that they may invoke it in a red state, for example, where a governor would likely be readily complying with it, and then use the deployment of military forces or ICE officials or National Guard to blue cities in those states to suppress the voter turnout to ensure a red candidate would get elected. You can imagine where that might happen. What do you see the risks are, and how can we stabilize our democracy if indeed one of those red lines are crossed?
Well, I think first off the bat, we need to get prepared. I would take it, ask your question a step back. So, step number one, we got to get everybody registered. And we have lots of areas of massive underregistration. Our young people, who are our best voting group, massively underregistered. African American voters in lots of places, massively underregistered. No one, everybody talks about Latino voters, African American voters. No one talks about Asian American Pacific Islander voters. Though Asian American Pacific Islander voters voted 80% Democrat in New Jersey and Virginia.
Mm.
Why in the world would you register that group up the wazoo? Then we need to get turnout, and we need to protect vote by mail. We need to protect the vote. Latino voters are extremely concerned, rightly so, that ICE will be at polling places. We have tested deploying lawyers at every polling place and saying, if anybody questions your right, you don't have to address it. Go to the lawyer in the, protect the vote t-shirt, and you have a lawyer and they will protect your vote. They will intervene for you. NAACP did a program like that, which was massively underfunded and should be, 300 times funded this year. And it was wildly successful. People thought, well, the NAACP stands up for stuff, so I'm going to go and I have a lawyer. And it made people more self-confident.
Right.
Everybody should check their registration, and we should encourage our friends to check their registration. Not just make a plan to vote, but check your registration, because they're messing around with these lists like crazy. And check it while you still have time to get registered. And we're not running that campaign enough. We're not running the social media enough. We need PSA ads that say, check your registration before this date, before it closes down.
Right.
So we need all of that. And then we have the constitutional crises that you commented on. And I think we have people like Public Citizen, Brennan Center, and many others. I'm sorry I even started naming, because I know I left out some important players, NAACP, et cetera, Unidos that are gearing up for that kind of very, very, very serious legal action. And then I think we have to stand up and protect the polls, just as neighbors stood up for our neighbors in Minneapolis. And I think they did an unbelievable job. We need to go stand up for our neighbors voting. We need to protect them. And we need to film everything. We need to challenge. We need to identify those lawyers who are at the polling booth and say, I will walk you over. Why are you asking this person these questions? I mean, I'm an old white lady, Republican from Montana. I am not going to let my neighbors be challenged in their votes.
Beautiful. So last question now. If we sat down together in 10 years and American democracy was healthier and more trusted and less polarized, what would have changed between now and then?
Oh, isn't that a great question? The first thing we would have done is we would have reduced barriers to participation. We have young people that just do not see the power in participating, and we need to make sure that happens. We would have passed some reforms. Cannot limp along for 10 more years with this democracy or lack thereof. I hope we would have passed campaign finance reform. If we really want to see it different, we would have passed campaign finance reform. And then I think we would have understood, and this is something I hope we can get to work on together, Paul, because I know you think about this a lot. I do not believe we can save democracy, and I do not believe we can save the economy unless we link the two. They are intimately linked. And an economy that it works for everyone that economy has never been produced by any system that wasn't a democracy, but it hasn't been produced by democracies either.
Right. Well, thank you for that challenge. Thank you for your wisdom and for your insights and for all that you do. And I so appreciate our time together today. So thank you.
Oh, this
Linda,
was so
and good
fun.
luck.
Thank you.
That was a fun interview with Celinda Lake, a premier Democratic pollster who shared her insight from the past all the way into the future and gave us perspectives about the important need for candidates and for the political system to intertwine fixing our economy and fixing our democracy. It's not separate things. It's not this, then that. Both of those things have to occur together. She had some pearls of wisdom as well that I just resonated with me deeply. So I believe that Celinda Lake is an optimist for the wisdom of the people and the voice of the people and to listen to the people, and that the political system should be responding to what the people say. So thanks, Celinda, for all you do. Have a great week.
Are you ready to be part of the revolution? To learn more about building movements, please visit unify-usa.org. To get to know Dr. Zeitz, please visit drpaulzeitz.org. If you like this show, be sure to follow on YouTube or your favorite podcast app so you don't miss an episode. Revolutionary Optimism, transforming the world one episode at a time.